So, like previous time, I've given the topic on how this camp affected the people. So, any point about that? Anyone is supporting or against it?
We've discussed the effect of the camps at length in the GSL and in the moderated caucus. I think what we need to do now is try and move forward towards a solution. We need to make certain demands, we need to make certain requirements.
That is exactly what I'm trying to state. So we can now propose a mod conc on that so I can propose a mod conc, and assuming that you all agree with it, it should pass. So yeah, that's all. I'm just framing it and I'll just share it on chat just a second. I'm just answering some chats that I've received.
Alright, so then we'll stick with that. I just have one more question to ask you.
Yeah.
Why are China's actions being internationally condemned as such when there were far more violent situations of terrorist handling in places like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Libya?
The places, countries such as Iraq, Syria, are directly under the influence of terrorist organizations that have been recognized by the international community, such as ISIS. Unless and until you are declared as a terrorist state, they are not concerned of the international community or any country or a nation state as such. Only because you are part of the international committee, that is why you're a part of this UNHRC committee, which is the Human Rights Committee, and which is why the claims are just that of violation of human rights instead of terrorism. Not once has anyone stated about terrorist activities being recorded, because that is not the duty or the responsibility of this committee. We have only reported about the human rights violation and the violation of fundamental rights and sanctity of the people, which has been reported. So that is why the concerns such as Afghanistan and Syria are beyond our committee and approach.
The Uyghur population had a lot of local extremism, especially in the 1990s. There were cases of terrorism like in 1990 in Kashgar, southern Xianang. There was a terrorist attack, several cops were killed. And an attack in 2009, after which the government of China formed the re-education centers to peacefully mitigate the terror. Asked about the protest,
Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification.
Yes,
in 2009, are you referring to the Urumqi protests?
It was a protest, I will not deny that, but it was not a peaceful protest.
And was it also not a protest that began after? Was it not a protest that began after the Chinese government did nothing, after dozens of Uyghurs were killed in a factory, after they were falsely accused of the rape of a Han Chinese woman, in a clear incident of racial and ethnic violence?
Well, so you were saying that these attacks these protests were non-violent?
The protests may not have been non-violent, but China's response to the initial act of racial violence seems to be sincerely lacking, while their response to the act of violence from the other side seems to be highly excessive. So there's a clear bias between the responses based on the fact that one was coming from the Han Chinese community on the Uyghur community, while in the second case, it was the other way around. One saw the creation of concentration camps, while one saw a
The delegate of USA will like to introduce a motion on biodiversity conservation. So, biodiversity conservation is the practice of protecting and preserving the wealth and variety of species, habitats, ecosystems, and genetic diversity on the planet. Is important for our health, wealth, food, fuel, and services which...
Yes, you are audible.
In September 2008, the Switzerland Swiss Parliament mandated the Federal Office for the Environment to develop a new overarching national biodiversity strategy. This strategy will set the framework for biodiversity conservation over the next decades. Changes in ecosystem structure and functioning, as well as unexpected interaction between species, are likely to become more common. By reinstating the connectivity of habitats, the potential for adaptive changes in ecosystem shall be increased. The resilience of ecosystem safeguard and thus the long-term provision of
The new UK list of priority species and habitats is an important reference source. These priority habitats and species are a focus for conservation during the next decade and will be used to inform lists of priority species under legislation in each of the states of UK. The UK list of priority species and habitats has been published with initial signposting to identify the most important types of action necessary for the conservation of each species. The four administrations of the UK will work together to translate these priorities into programs of work delivered by partnerships of statutory, voluntary, and academic and business organizations at the level most appropriate.
For the third time now. The point is, we did not have a problem with Ukraine. The problem was when Ukraine started joining NATO, when Ukraine initiated the process of joining NATO, triggered by the USA, if I may add once again. Secondly, when Ukraine started committing a genocide against the people living in the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. That's it. We did not have a problem with Ukraine before all this happened. And we will not have a problem if all this stops as well, if proper reparations are paid and if all this stops as well in the future.
But I think the third
Ukraine, you can type it in the chat.
Okay,
New Zealand. You can go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, one of the three bases that Russian Federation provided was the Russian-Ukrainian Friendship Treaty, which has already expired in 2019, exactly because of the 2014 attack. So I have a question for the Russian Federation. Why do you think that the Ukraine wanting to join NATO is not justified, as I'm pretty sure anyone want to protect themselves from such a dangerous country which can just attack whenever they want? Although I do understand your concern of if the Ukraine joins NATO is only 1 minute away from Moscow.
Right, Delegate of New Zealand, I believe you looked at the incomplete cards. The treaty expired in 2018. However, the reason for it expiring was Ukraine did not renew it. Russia had renewed it. Ukraine did not. So the point is, you can't hold.
Yeah, no, my question, the reason, as I'm sure you're aware, is Ukraine did not sign up because of the 2014 attack, the annexation of Crimea. That was done by Russia, was it not?
So what's the problem? No, just a minute. The Russian Federation does not. It does not matter to us why the Ukraine did not renew the contract. What matters to us is that it did not, and hence we're not legally bound to not retaliate. As simple as that. The reasons behind it could be anything which doesn't matter to us at all. Talking about the Crimean annexation, I could talk about that at length and justify it as well from a Russian point of view. However, that would, I believe, waste the committee's time.
I think
A very warm morning to the respected Honorable Chair and Vice Chair and my fellow delegates. The delegate of India would like to speak on the sub-agenda impact of Ukraine and Russia war on the respective countries. Following Russia's invasions of Ukraine, the children there are experiencing the devastating consequences of living in a war zone. The constant threat of shelling, shooting, and losing loved ones, as well as the worry over accessing food, clean drinking water, and healthcare, and the breakdown of their usual routines and structures. The legacy of this war will be a traumatized generation.
sharing. Post-traumatic stress disorder and depression are the most common mental health disorders in the aftermath of war for both adults and children. While the incidence of these disorders are difficult to estimate, for example, past studies of newly arrived refugee children show rates of anxiety from 49% to 69%. So there is a rapid increase. So the delegate of India suggests
Delegate, are you there? Delegate, are you there?
India facilitates the safe return of 22,500 Indian nationals, most of the students studying.
There will be no time limit for me.
Yes, delegate. 90 seconds is the time limit for this moderator.
Being a neighboring country of Ukraine, the current scenario of war becomes a really essential issue to be discussed as it's obstructing the overall development of both the nations and the entire world on a broader scale. The war in Ukraine is having a devastating effect on the children and families in Ukraine, facing unimaginable fear. Childhoods are abruptly disrupted, families are torn apart. Millions of Ukrainian children risk growing up without the care they need now more than ever. The war has shattered the child protection system in Ukraine. Among the most risk, thousands and hundreds of children in institutions such as orphanages and boarding schools under the current crisis are becoming alarmingly understaffed and challenged to provide primary care, psychosocial support and assistance to children with disabilities. As a result, children in these settings are exposed to a heightened risk of violence and neglect and are isolated with the low chances to be evacuated. We, being the neighboring country, appeal for an immediate cessation of hostilities under a ceasefire has been negotiated. We ask to prioritize the care and protection of children and the respect of their human rights. We also call on the international community and the like-minded partners to disregard the differences between us and to join hands to ensure that children who have lost parental care and those at risk of losing it keep safe and receive the dedicated care they need.
Children and information on coping techniques and resources for assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. You have exhausted your time and elapsed it. So we'll be moving on to the next delegate.
Delegate of South Korea.
Thank you for the recognition. Imagine being a child. Imagine being a child who has to live with the fear of getting beaten up or abused every single day of life. Imagine being a child who has no one to share his thoughts with. Greetings of the day, Honorable Chairperson, Vice Chairperson, and the delegates of the House. This is the delegate of South Korea, and today the delegate would like to share their thoughts before the committee. Child abuse is a flourishing evil that is still prevalent in every society. Child abuse or maltreatment can be physical, psychological, sexual maltreatment or neglect of a child. Nearly 3 in 4 children, or 300 million children, roughly aged 2 to 4 years, regularly suffer physical punishment or psychological violence at the hands of parents and caregivers. It impacts various aspects of a child's personality and may cause stunted growth and development. Since the submission of the latest report in 2017, South Korea has made meaningful achievements in promoting the rights of the children. The government had introduced child benefits in 2017 and established the National Center for the Rights of the Children. In May 2019, it had launched policies for children towards building an inclusive society aimed at strengthening public accountability for children, and promoting a country where children are happy.
Marine litter
South
is one
Korea
of the
is fully
largest
aware
emerging
that there is room
environmental
for
challenges
improvement
and
despite
needs
all
to
the
be
achievements.
tackled at global,
To ensure the
regional, and
happiness and
national
rights
level.
of the children,
The plastic
South Korea would
associations
exert
in Europe are
utmost
increasingly
efforts.
engaged
In the end,
in
the
protecting the
delegate of
marine
South Korea
environment
believes that
and
with the
encouraging
cooperation of the nations
stakeholders
present
from
today, the
industrial,
innocent
political,
citizens surpassing
scientific, and
cultural boundaries
non-governmental
will be able
and
to
social
have the
spheres to
justice they
act together to preserve the oceans and coastal areas. In Germany, numerous researchers are studying pollutions of the oceans. For example, the European Joint Project Baseman and Weather MIMC are coordinated in Germany. Baseman defines standards for microplastic analysis in Europe water. Weather MIC studies toxicity and also the degradation of microplastics in the ocean. 55% of Germany's North Sea water are affected by marine pollution. The best way to stop marine pollution in Germany is refusing any single-use of plastics that we need to, like example, straws, plastic bags, take out utensils, taking out containers, and purchasing. And we should carry reusable versions of those products, including reusable grocery bags, produce bags, bottles, utensils, coffee cups. It's
For the delegate of Germany. Yes, Russian Federation.
Ma'am, in your speech, you mentioned that maritime pollution can be combated on a regional level as well. So, what according to you are some initiatives that can be taken on that level?
Can you repeat your question?
Sure. Ma'am, in your speech, you mentioned that maritime pollution can be combated on a regional level. So, what initiatives, according to you, can be taken to do that?
I said the line that marine litter is one of the largest emerging environmental challenges, so they will need to be tackled at global, regional levels and like national levels. For example, like I gave an example that the plastic associations in Europe are increasingly engaged in protecting the marine environment. So I gave an example of stakeholders from industrial, politician, and scientific, non-governmental, and social spheres to act together to preserve the ocean and coastal areas.
Ma'am, free to follow up. Ma'am, you said, ma'am, what you are saying, what solutions that you have proposed can be done on a more global level. What solutions can be, what initiatives can be taken on a regional level or a local level?
On a local level, like you meant to say, what people can take them?
Yes.
Like people can take them not to throwing plastic bags, and they can take small challenges only. The government take big challenges, like I gave an example of European projects also, Baseman and Weather MIC. I gave an examples of that also, that are tackled in global levels.
The Republic of South Africa is in support of addressing the issue of drastically reducing maritime pollution, including plastic. Plastic pollution leakage into aquatic ecosystems has grown sharply in recent years, with dire consequences for human health, the global economy, biodiversity, and the climate. If we want to address this issue, then we need to ensure that we focus on prevention rather than cure. South Africa has joined Clean Seas campaign of the United Nations Environment Programme to reduce the use of unnecessary, avoidable, and problematic plastics. South Africa has started a new project that aims to stop marine litter at its source, thereby lessening the amount of pollution that reaches the ocean. To address the crisis of waste and pollution, we underscore the need to adopt a circular economy approach to plastic waste. We are in support of mandating the United Nations Environment Programme to establish an intergovernmental negotiating committee to negotiate an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution and addressing the global environmental challenges. We need to emphasize on the mandates of the respective Rio Conventions.